Welcome back, everyone. In today's lesson, we move from the conceptual foundations of multifunctionality to a more practical question: how we actually assess multifunctionality. So, before we look at indicators and methodologies, we need to understand why evaluating multifunctionality is complex and why its implementation is still limited in practice. This brings us to the main barriers that affect multifunctionality in agriculture. As we have seen through this course, multifunctionality in agriculture is a powerful idea. It helps us understand how farming can contribute to and not only to food production, but also to sustainability, biodiversity, and rural development. However, turning this concept into reality is not always straightforward. There are still several barriers that limit its full implementation. The first barrier is policy fragmentation. So, in many countries, agricultural policies still reward productivity above everything else. As a result, non market values such as cultural heritage, biodiversity, or social cohesion receive much less attention. Then the second challenge concerns measurements. So many multifunctional benefits are difficult to quantify. Um, so how do we measure the value of a scenic landscape or the cohesion of a rural community? So different countries also use different sets of indicators, which makes comparison and coordinated strategies difficult. Then, as you can see in the slide, the third issue is what we call conceptual fuzziness. Sometimes multifunctionality is perceived as a too broad, too concept, context dependent, or even too vague to be standardized. So, in practice, it often emerges as a reaction to opportunities rather than being designed from the start. Then, finally, there are institutional silos. Agriculture frequently operates separately from sectors like energy, tourism, or nature conservation. This makes cross-sector collaboration difficult, partially because responsibility are spread across different institutions. Sorry. So while the potential of multifunctionality is clear, these barriers need to be addressed for the concept to truly transform agricultural systems. As we look ahead, it becomes clear that multifunctionality is still a concept in evolution. So, if we want it to become a practical tool for farmers, policymakers, and communities too, there are important research gaps to fill. So the first gap concerns measurement and assessment. So we have many indicators and tools, but they are still fragmented. Most focus on ecological and economical dimensions, while social and cultural functions remains less developed. So we also lack long-term monitoring, which limits our ability to understand how multifunctional practices contribute to resilience or climate adaptation over time. So developing integrated composite indicators, possibly linked to SDGs or common agricultural policies objectives is still a clear priority. Then the second gap, as you can see, concerns social political dynamics and governance. So we still know little about how multifunctionality is interpreted, negotiated, or implemented by farmers or other stakeholders. How do farmers manage trade-offs between production and ecosystems protection? And which governance model work best at landscape level? So approaches such as co-design, participatory planning, and territorial contract contracts are promising, but also they remain under-researched. Then we have the third gap, a research gap, concerns economic evaluation and incentives. Many multifunctional outputs, biodiversity, landscape quality, and cultural values, do not have a market price. So, this makes it challenging to design targeted payments or incentives. So, we need better tools to evaluate these benefits and connect them with financial mechanisms such as payments for ecological services, carbon credits, or biodiversity offsets. So we need more empirical evidence on whether these mechanisms are actually effective and fair. Finally, there is a gap in contextual adaptation and policy learning. Multifunctionality does not look the same everywhere. Its expression depends on local biophysical conditions, history, and knowledge systems. So, a strategies that works in peri-urban area may not apply in mountain regions and coastal zones or arid landscapes. So, comparative studies and international learning frameworks would help share that what works and why it works. So, in short, multifunctionality is widely recognized in both science and policy, but further research is needed for it to shift from theory to practice and truly support the sustainability transition. As we already said a lot of time, multifunctionality in agriculture does far beyond food production. It is a way to connect with some of the major global challenges, including food security and climate change, and so on. So, one way to see this link clearly is through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So let's consider a few examples as I reported here. The, mm, the Sustainable Development Goal number two, zero hunger, multifunctionality promotes sustainable farming systems that provide food while protecting natural resources. So this is essential in a world where production must increase, but environmental impacts must decrease. Then we have the number 13, the climate action. Multifunctional system enhance climate mitigation and adaptation. So practice such as agroforestry, permanent grasslands, and soil conservation um, co- mm, and the reduce emissions and strengthen resilience to extreme events. The number 15, life on land. So biodiversity is at the heart of multifunctionality. So by maintaining habitats, hedgerows, buffer strips, and mixed land uses, farms became part of a larger ecological network that sustain pollinators and soil life. Then another example is SDG number 8, um, decent work and economical growth. So the multifunctional approach supports rural employment, not only in farming, but also in tourism, processing services, and cultural activities. So this contributes to vibrant rural communities and reduce the population. So here the key message is simple. Multifunctionality is not just an um, agricultural strategy. It is a bridge connecting farming to broader sustainability goals. So, supporting multifunctionality means supporting a more resilient and sustainable society. When assessing multifunctionality, the first question we must ask is at which level we are operating. So at farm level, we evaluate practices and management decisions. At the landscape level, we examine ecological interactions and service provision. And at the territorial level, we look at policy outcomes, incentives, and contribution to the sustainable development goals. So, only by integrating these three scales, we can fully understand multifunctionality and guide sustainability transitions. So, at the farm level, multifunctionality is assessed through indicators that describe how farmers manage resources and deliver multiple outputs. So we have technical indicators including yields, livestock productivity, diversification, and input use efficiency. This helps evaluate economic performance and resilience. We have environmental indicators such as soil organic matter, nutrient balance, and water quality. And then we have social economic indicators, including employment, gender and young participation, agritourism, education, and income diversification. So overall, the farm level helps us to understand how individual management divisions generate both commodity and non-commodity outputs. Regarding the landscape level, multifunctionality does not emerge from farms in isolation. So, landscape ecology studies show that many multifunctional outcomes depend on spatial interactions. So, at this level, we assess ecological fragmentation and connectivity. So, using metrics such as patch size, hedgerows, networks and the habitat heterogeneity. Then we have a green infrastructure, including riparian buffers and grasslands. And then the ecosystem services such as pollination, water regulation, erosion control, and cultural values. So landscape level evaluation is essential because multifunctionality emerges from ecological networks, not from individual farms alone. Then we have the territorial and policy level. At the territorial scale, assessment connects agriculture to broader societal goals and public policy. So we consider common agricultural policy performance monitoring and evaluation framework. These indicators include eco scheme adoption, carbon farming, biodiversity friendly management, and social indicators for rural areas. Then we have PES, so payments for ecosystem services based on OECD and TEEB valuation frameworks, which quantify non-market benefits and support instruments such as carbon credits or biodiversity offsets. And then we have the alignment with the SDG, so the Sustainable Development Goals, as we can see here. So since multifunctionality contributes directly to, as we said, Sustainable Development Goals 2, 6, 8, and so on, this requires composite indicators integrating environmental, economic, and social dimensions. Okay, this is the end of this lesson. This was a short lesson. So when we talk about assessing multifunctionality, we must always ask at which level we are operating, as I said before. So only by integrating these skills, so farm level, landscape level, and policy level, we can fully capture the multifunctional nature of agriculture, as recommended by FAO and OECD, and of course European Union. And only through these multi-level assessments can multifunctionality become mm, a practical tool to support sustainability transition in real agricultural system. So thank you everyone for this lesson and see you.